The rope's shadow, a tale of courage, truth, and redemption. The Texas sun wasn't setting it, was executing every living thing beneath it, guilty until proven dead. Nathaniel Cross saw her from a quarter-mile out. At first, he thought it was a deer carcass hunters sometimes strung up kills to let them bleed out. But as his horse drew closer, the shape resolved into something that made his stomach turn to ice. A woman, hanging upside down from a dead cottonwood, rope cutting deep into her ankles. Body swaying slightly in the furnace-hot wind, native Comanche from the beadwork on what remained of her dress. Young, maybe and from the way her chest was still moving barely, desperately she was alive. Nathaniel was 71 years old. He'd survived 2 wars, buried 3 children, and spent the last decade learning one simple truth. Mind your business, and you might live to see tomorrow. He should ride on, should pretend he saw nothing, should let nature, or whoever did this, finish the job. But then she spoke, a whisper, so faint, the wind nearly stole it. Please. It's torn. Don't touch me there. It hurts so bad. The shame in her voice, the terrible awareness that she was exposed, vulnerable, on display. Nathaniel harder than any bullet. He dismounted, pulled his knife, and walked toward the tree. As he positioned himself to cut the rope, he realized how this must look. An old white man standing behind a bound native woman, touching her legs to free them. If anyone saw this moment, no explanation would matter. The image alone would condemn him. Nathaniel cut the rope anyway. She fell into his arms, dead weight, burning with fever, bleeding from wounds he couldn't yet see but could smell. Old blood, infection, days of suffering. He carried her to his horse and laid her across the saddle as gently as he could manage, with his arthritic hands. As he did, he saw dust rising in the distance, riders, approaching fast. Someone was coming. Someone who either wanted to finish what they'd started, or who'd seen what Nathaniel had just done and was coming to make their own assumptions. Nathaniel swung into the saddle behind the unconscious woman and spurred his horse forward. He'd just saved her life. And in doing so, he suspected he'd just signed his own death warrant. Nathaniel's cabin was 12 miles from the hanging tree, far enough to buy time, close enough that word would travel fast. He carried the woman inside and laid her on his bed. In the lamplight, the extent of her injuries became horrifyingly clear. Whip marks, burns, and worse, deep lacerations across her buttocks and thighs, layered over older scars. This wasn't punishment. This was torture. Systematic, repeated torture. Nathaniel cleaned the wounds with whiskey and bandaged them with strips torn from his own shirts. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes screaming in Comanche, sometimes whispering in broken English. He said I was wicked, said I needed to learn, said no one would believe me. Nathaniel didn't ask questions. Just worked, keeping his touch clinical, his eyes averted from anything that wasn't a wound needing treatment. When he was done, he stepped back and sat in a chair across the room, giving her space even though she was unconscious. The riders arrived just after dawn. Nathaniel heard them coming for horses, moving fast but not panicked. He stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. The lead rider was a Comanche man in his 50s, well-dressed with the bearing of someone used to authority. Behind him rode 3 white men from town, the shopkeeper, a ranch hand Nathaniel vaguely recognized, and the town drunk, who apparently sobered up for lynch mobs. Nathaniel Cross, the Comanche man said, his English perfect. I am Joseph Whitehorse. I believe you have my stepdaughter. I have a woman who was dying. I brought her here to save her life. Very noble. Whitehorse's smile was cold. Tell me, when you found her hanging there, what exactly were you doing behind her? The question landed like a punch. Nathaniel understood immediately the optics of that moment, the way it could be twisted. I was cutting her down. That's one interpretation. But several people saw a white man standing behind a bound native woman, saw her crying out, heard words that could be misunderstood. One of the white men, the shopkeeper, spoke up nervously. We're not accusing you of anything, Nathaniel. We just need to understand what happened. What happened? Nathaniel said slowly. Is that your friend here? He gestured at Whitehorse. or someone he knows, tortured that woman and left her to die. And instead of asking why she was hanging there, you're asking why I cut her down. Whitehorse's expression didn't change. My stepdaughter is troubled. Prone to episodes, sometimes discipline is necessary. What you interpreted as torture was correction. Correction. Nathaniel spat the word. Is that what you call those burns on her thighs? Those whip marks on her back? Those scars that go back years? You examined her quite thoroughly, didn't you? Whitehorse's voice dripped with insinuation. An old man, a young woman, alone in a cabin. It's interesting how quickly people draw conclusions. The trap was elegant. Nathaniel had saved her, which meant he'd seen her injuries, which meant he'd undressed her, which meant in the minds of men looking for scandal, he'd violated her. Get off my property, Nathaniel said quietly. We'll go. But we'll be back. With questions, with witnesses. Whitehorse smiled. The truth always comes out, Mr. Cross. I just wonder which truth will arrive first, mine or yours. They rode away, leaving Nathaniel standing on his porch. Knowing his quiet life had just ended, inside, the woman had woken. She'd heard everything. He'll kill you, she whispered. Joseph will tell everyone you. That, you. She couldn't finish the sentence. You should have left me, probably, Nathaniel agreed. But I didn't. So now we deal with what comes next. What comes next is a rope. For you, maybe. But at least I'll hang, knowing I did right. That's better than living, knowing I didn't. The doctor arrived at sunset, a thin, gray-haired man named Elijah Frost, who'd been treating gunshot wounds and broken bones in West Texas for 30 years. I heard there was an injured woman here, Frost said, not waiting for an invitation before walking in. Heard some concerning rumors to figured I'd see for myself. Nathaniel let him in without a word. The woman she'd told Nathaniel her name was which meant beautiful in Navajo. She was Navajo, not Comanche. But Whitehorse had taken her after her family died, lay on the bed. Watching the doctor with wary eyes, Dr. Frost examined her wounds with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen too much suffering to waste time being gentle. After 15 minutes, he stood, washed his hands, and turned to Nathaniel. These wounds are systematic, repeated. Some are weeks old, some are months old, some are fresh from a few days ago. He looked Nathaniel in the eye. Did you do this? No, I believe you. But I needed to ask. Frost pulled a chair close to Naj. Who did this to you? She looked away. It doesn't matter. No one will believe me. Try me. Slowly, painfully, she told her story. Joseph Whitehorse had taken her in after her family died in a cholera outbreak. Seemed kind at first. Then the discipline started. When she didn't cook properly, when she spoke her own language, when she looked at men in town or when men looked at her, whether she encouraged it or not, the beatings escalated. The torture began. And when she tried to run, he hung her from that tree as a lesson. He told people I was wicked, Najoni said. That I tempted men, that I needed to be broken of my pride. And now, Dr. Frost said quietly, he's telling people, Nathaniel violated you. Because that's easier to believe than the truth that a respected man has been torturing his stepdaughter for years. Exactly. Frost stood. I'm going to document these injuries. Photographs, if you'll allow it. Medical testimony. And then I'm going to the territorial marshal. They won't listen, Najoni said. Joseph has money. Influence. I'm nobody. You're somebody to me, Nathaniel said. And you're somebody to the truth. That's got to count for something. In this territory. Najoni's laugh was bitter. Truth is whatever the powerful say it is. She wasn't wrong. But Nathaniel had lived too long to believe lies should go unchallenged just because challenging them was dangerous. They came on the third night, not the law. But something worse. A mob, 15 men on horseback, carrying torches and rope, their faces hard with righteous fury. Joseph Whitehorse rode at their center, playing the wounded father. The victim of rumor and scandal, Nathaniel stood on his porch, rifle ready but not raised. Nathaniel Cross. The town drunk, shouted apparently the mob's spokesman. Come out. We're here for the girl. And to settle accounts. There's nothing to settle. She's under my protection. Your protection. Joseph Whitehorse's voice was poison-sweet. Is that what you call it? An old man alone with a young woman. We've all heard the stories. Nathaniel. The things you did. The liberties you took. Lies are they. Then let us examine her. Let a proper woman from town verify her condition. It was a trap. Any examination would reveal her injuries, which Whitehorse would claim Nathaniel caused. Any refusal would seem like guilt. Before Nathaniel could respond, the cabin door opened. Najoni stepped out, moving slowly, each step clearly painful. She'd dressed in her cleanest clothes, braided her hair, and was holding herself with a dignity that made Nathaniel's chest tight. You want to examine me? She said, her voice carrying across the yard. Fine, but you examine all of me, every scar, every burn, every wound that's months old, and you explain how a man who found me 3 days ago caused injuries from 6 months ago. The mob shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Frost emerged from the shadows. Nathaniel hadn't even known he was there. I've already examined her, Frost announced. Documented everything. And I'm prepared to testify that these injuries are systematic abuse spanning at least 2 years. Which means either Nathaniel is a time traveler, or someone else has been torturing this woman. You can't prove Whitehorse started. I can prove the age of the wounds. I can prove the pattern. I can prove you're lying. Frost pulled out a folder. I've also found 3 other women in town with similar injuries, all of whom were in Joseph Whitehorse's employ at some point, all of whom were too afraid to speak until now. The mob's certainty wavered. One Mantha shopkeeper lowered his torch. Joseph, is this true? Of course not. This is a conspiracy. They're trying to destroy my reputation. Your reputation, Najoni said quietly, destroyed itself. I'm just finally telling the truth about it. You, lying little Whitehorse, surged forward, hand raised. Nathaniel's rifle came up. Touch her, and I'll drop you where you stand. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the town marshal who'd been watching from the back of the crowd stepped forward. Joseph Whitehorse, he said, his voice tired but firm. You're coming with me. There are questions to answer. You can't be serious, dead serious. Dr. Frost's testimony is compelling. The other women have agreed to testify. You're under arrest pending investigation. 2 deputies moved forward. Whitehorse tried to run, didn't make it 10 feet before they had him on the ground, as he was dragged away. Screaming about injustice and conspiracies, the mob dispersed, some ashamed, some angry, all uncomfortable with how close they'd come to hanging an innocent man. When they were gone, Najoni's legs gave out. Nathaniel caught her, helped her to a chair. It's not over, she said. He has friends. Money, he'll fight this. Let him fight. We've got truth on our side now. That's got to count for something, does it? Nathaniel looked at Hearth. This woman who'd survived years of torture, who'd faced down a mob, who'd spoken truth to power, despite every reason to stay silent. Yeah, he said. I think it does. Joseph Whitehorse's trial lasted 3 days. Dr. Frost testified about the wounds. 3 other women testified about their own abuse at Whitehorse's hands. Najoni told her story calmly. With a dignity that made even the hostile judge pause, Whitehorse's lawyers tried everything. Character assassination, claims of conspiracy, accusations that Najoni had seduced him and was now seeking revenge. But the medical evidence was overwhelming. The testimony was consistent. And the jury, 12 men who'd started the trial, ready to acquit their friend, slowly realized they were looking at a monster, guilty on all counts. Was sentenced to 15 years in territorial prison. His property was seized to compensate his victims. Justice, such as it was, epilogue. What remained 6 months after the trial. Nathaniel stood on his porch and watched Najoni work in the garden she'd planted. She'd stayed in it out of obligation, but because she wanted to. Because, after years of torture, she'd found a place where she was seen as a person instead of property. They weren't romantic. Nathaniel was too old to set in his ways. Najoni had been through too much to want any man touching her. But they'd built something else. Partnership, respect. The quiet comfort of two people who'd survived the worst and decided to build something gentle with what remained. Do you regret it? Najoni asked one evening. Cutting me down. Everything that came after. Nathaniel thought about the mob. The accusations. The nights he'd lain awake wondering if he'd hang for doing the right thing. No, he said finally. I regret a lot of things in my life, but that's not one of them. Even though it cost you. It didn't cost me anything I wasn't willing to pay. He looked at the garden, at the home they'd built together, and I gained more than I lost. Najoni smiled a real smile, the first he'd seen from her. Me too. They sat together as the sun set. Two survivors who'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to look away when everyone else does. The rope that had hung Najoni was gone now, cut up and burned. But its shadow remained a reminder of what cruelty looks like, and what courage costs. And in a small cabin on the edge of nowhere, two people who'd been broken by the world found wholeness in each other's company. Not because they'd healed completely, but because they'd learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means building something new from the pieces that remain.